Retro Games fans, this is Andy C from Pieces of 8-Bit. Welcome to this week's video. So this is the last video for the PlayStation 2 before we go back and have a look to see what it's been like to live with for the last 4 weeks. This week I wanted to have a bit of a talk about kind of a random subject really. I wanted to have a bit of a think about mascots on the PlayStation 2, and the reason for that is, well, there is no reason for that really. I just kind of wanted to explore it because I thought to myself while I was playing through the PS2 games, who is the mascot for the PlayStation 2? When you think about Nintendo, you think about Mario, that's the first thing, but they've got loads. I mean, they've got Link, they've got Seamus, they've got Kirby, you know, whatever it happens to be. But Mario is probably the one. If you see Mario, you associate that with Nintendo. He is the sort of main mascot for that. If you think about Sega, of course, it's going to be Sonic the Hedgehog. Of course, whether that's the Dreamcast or the Master System or whatever it happens to be. Although interestingly on the Master System, I think probably we were looking more like Alex Kidd as being the mascot, but really when you think of Sega, you think of Sonic the Hedgehog. And even the Xbox, Xbox had a bit of a go. They had Blinks the Time Sweeper, didn't really work out, but Master Chief summarizes, really epitomizes what Xbox gaming was all about. It was all about Halo, and that really is the one that you would associate with the Xbox, and that probably has also continued through the era. So when you think of PlayStation, well, it's difficult really because it depends on the generation. So if for the PlayStation 1 you might be saying something like Crash Bandicoot, for the PlayStation 5 you might be saying something like Astrobot. Interestingly, if you look at the different versions of PlayStation, they all sort of have a different mascot as well, which is quite interesting. So there's no one mascot that really kind of carries on through the whole of the PlayStation life cycle since the mid-90s up to today, so 30 plus years. And I would say Sony probably don't have a de facto mascot. So we're going to be diving into that a little bit today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the nearly made it, and then I'm going to talk about what I think are the top 3 picks for mascot for the PlayStation 2. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the other PlayStations as well, and where we think they fit in. But let's dive straight into the first section, and before revealing what I think are the top 3 mascots and my number 1 pick for the PlayStation 2 mascot, let's talk a little bit about some honourable mentions. Alright, so who could be our picks for PlayStation 2? The ones that maybe didn't quite make it. Well, first, we've got to talk about Kratos, right? We've got to talk about God of War. Now, Kratos is definitely a mascot for later PlayStations. I think when you look at the 3 and the 4, I think he would definitely be in your top list of potential mascots for those later platforms. But he came very late in the PS2's life cycle, so really that meant that Kratos probably doesn't quite qualify as a PlayStation 2 mascot because he was right at the end of the cycle there. Then we've got Dante from Devil May Cry, very stylish, sleek character that he was, but multi-platform in the end, so that kind of means that that isn't going to work really. So let's draw a line under that one. Then we've got Ico and Wonder, so the 2 games, obviously Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. 2 very beautiful games, probably a bit too art house, I would say, really, for those to qualify as mascots. I just don't think as characters they're recognisable enough and don't necessarily fit into that sort of that genre really. Then we of course have Snake from the Metal Gear series, MGS2, fantastic game, MGS3 as well on the PlayStation 2, great games. Very, despite the big presence, that kind of espionage thing just doesn't really smack of mascot material to me. Doesn't really fit the mascot mold, if there were such a thing. So those are kind of my nearly made it, the honourable mentions. So let's have a look now at what we think are, before I reveal my top 3, I'm going to keep you hanging on. Let's have a quick talk about what we think the mascots might be on some of the other generations of PlayStation, and see if any of ours appear in that list later on. Alright, so before we get on to the top 3 for the PlayStation 2, let's talk about the top 3s for the other PlayStations, from the original PlayStation through to the PS5. The original PlayStation, or the PlayStation 1, we've got a few absolute classics on there. We've got Lara Croft, I think, is a great mascot for that original PlayStation. Very synonymous with the original PlayStation, obviously later on a cross-platform icon, but the original Tomb Raider games, absolutely fantastic. Very synonymous with the original PlayStation. Then we had Spyro, again, another a great mascot, very colourful, all of those kind of things. Later became Spyro the Dragon. Also became cross-platform, and probably our top pick, the most synonymous with the PlayStation 1, has got to be Crash Bandicoot. And of course, again, Crash Bandicoot, owned by a house now, which is owned by Microsoft. But the original Crash Bandicoot, very, very synonymous with the original PlayStation 1, and probably the de facto mascot for that generation. Let's obviously skip over number 2. That's what we're going to talk about in a minute. Let's talk about 3. So we had Nathan Drake, I think, a great mascot, and the Uncharted games, absolutely fantastic. Obviously carried on to the 4. But I think probably he is an exceptionally good pick as a mascot for the PS3, and we definitely saw him appearing in a lot of promotional materials for that. Sackboy, a really good attempt at a sort of cutesy mascot for the Little Big Planet games on the PlayStation 3. Really, really cool games, actually. They look fantastic back in the day. And then we've got Kratos, or Kratos 2.0. From the God of War games, really hitting stride in the PlayStation 3. And I think probably if we go straight into PlayStation 4, Kratos is going to appear again, right? The 2018 version, absolutely God of War at its peak. Absolutely fantastic game there as well. We've also got Alloy, another one, and I think actually on my PlayStation 4 box, which is sitting up in the loft, I think Alloy appears on there. She certainly appears on my PlayStation 5, I think. That's, of course, from the Horizon games. And then we also have Spider-Man, which is not necessarily a Sony original, but certainly synonymous with the PS4. Sony obviously own the rights to Spider-Man, the movies as well now, but fantastic games on the PS4 there as well. And then, of course, in the PS5, we've already mentioned Astrobot, fantastic icon for that. We've got Miles Morales. If we kind of carry on that Spider-Man theme, would be another great mascot for the PS5. And of course, one which is going to be in our list, there's a bit of a clue there, which is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Fantastic game, as I've mentioned in my bit between in the week when we were playing on the original Ratchet and Clank game. Fantastic. And Rift Apart on the PS5, absolutely fantastic, and continues to be a fresh franchise 23 years after its original launch on the PS2. So there you go, those are my picks for the other PlayStation. So let's get into my top 3 picks for the PlayStation 2. Okay, so at number 3, our gold medal position for representing the PlayStation 2 as its main mascot is Sly Cooper. Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus marked the debut of one of PlayStation's coolest characters. He bought that unique cel-shaded comic book look, and I talked a lot about this in the bit between a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely fantastic looking game, still looks amazing today. It has a really good blend of stealth and platforming, and it bought us 3 absolutely excellent PlayStation 2 games, which are still very, very playable today. And there's a devoted community out there that still wants to see it revived. We had a Ratchet and Clank in 2021. I think people would still quite like to see another Sly Cooper. You never know. Maybe one day we'll get another one. But that is Sly Cooper. Why is he only in number 3? Well, he does have a huge cult following, that's for sure. He is instantly recognisable by design. And he is one of the most stylish platforms of the era out there. But he's not quite number 1, because I think the next 2 just pip it. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty close in this top 3 in my opinion. Obviously this is just my opinion. Please do let me know your own thoughts on this as well. So who is in the number 2 silver medal position for representing the PlayStation 2 as its mascot? We have Jak and Daxter. This is the Naughty Dog game that followed Crash Bandicoot with something even bigger, even bolder, and even more ambitious than Crash Bandicoot. It delivered that full PS2 trilogy. It was a real kind of tone shift from that cute platformer. It was a very kind of gritty open world adventure. Daxter is one of the funniest sidekicks in PlayStation history. I think that's just a given, and anybody who disagrees with me is wrong. And it gives that sense that players were kind of growing up alongside that series. It kind of matured. It is that little bit darker than our number one position, which you'll have already worked out, no doubt. It's number 2 because it bought 4 PS2 games, huge popularity, and one of Sony's earliest early 2000 identities. But I still don't think it is quite up there with what I've picked for number 1, which you have almost certainly worked out now. And of course, number 1 is, not surprisingly, number 1 position for a gold medal position, even for representing the PlayStation 2 as the de facto mascot. So this is what I think is the PS2's de facto mascot if you were gonna pick one, or you had to pick one, and that is Ratchet and Clank. Of course it is. Of course it is. If you watch my bit between on Wednesday, you know how much I love the Ratchet and Clank games. I do absolutely love them, and I can always go back and play them. And it is the PlayStation 2's most consistent duo, and of course, as I mentioned before, made a bit of a reappearance on the PS5. Not that we were short of games in the intervening period. And as I mentioned in my bit between video earlier in the week, there are 17 games, soon to be 18 hopefully, that carry the Ratchet and Clank name. 9 of which are main titles, and then we also had a reboot as well in 2016. It is a phenomenon. It is an absolute phenomenon, and it is a PlayStation exclusive game. We had 4 major PlayStation 2 games. We had obviously all those amazing weapons, that fantastic gadget design, perfect blend of platforming and shooting. It's so easy to pick up and play. Anybody can play it. It's incredibly accessible. And of course, it's a series, as I mentioned, that never died across PS3, PS4 and PS5 as well. Why is it number 1? Well, as if that didn't tell you all that you needed to know already, and as if you hadn't realised that it was one of my favourite games from the PS2 by now. Its longevity, of course, the sales, the personality of the game, and if any franchise could capture the heart of the PS2, it was Ratchet and Clank. So there you go. Those are my top 3 picks, with my pick of Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank? Who the hell is that? Ratchet and Clank as my number 1 pick for PlayStation 2 mascot. Let me know what you think. Do you think I've picked wrongly? Do you think there's some others that I might have missed in there? Were there some that I didn't even consider, perhaps? Tell me why you agree or disagree, and also let me know your memories of playing Ratchet and Clank or any of the other games that I've mentioned today as well. Alright, let's just grab my final thoughts now, and yeah, then we'll probably leave it there for the day. So there you go, those are my top 3 picks, in my opinion, for PlayStation 2 mascot. Let me know, as I said before, what you think as well. But yeah, please don't shoot the messenger. Just my opinion, of course. But I would love to hear your thoughts. And one just final thought on this, really, which springs to mind, which is, why do we think that Sony has never really had a mascot that has lasted from one generation to the other, or indeed, really, a sort of de facto mascot that it kind of picked out for itself for any of the consoles? And I think that's quite an easy question to answer. And the answer to that is because of the way that Sony changed console gaming. When the original PlayStation came out, and certainly when the PlayStation 2 came out, it was everything to everyone. I mean, if you were into stealthy games, if you were into art house games, you had your Ico and your Shadow of the Colossus. If you were into you know, kind of first-person shooters, you were spoilt for choice, really. But you had your sort of time splitters and things like that. You had your mascots, you know, your platformer mascots, your 3D mascots, in the shape of the games that I've spoken about today. And that really is the point. And you know, whether you were looking for grittiness or whether you were looking for adventure or stealth in the shape of Metal Gear, or adventure in the shape of Tomb Raider, you know, you had all of these sorts of games. There was so much choice. It was the most diverse platform at the time, especially the PlayStation 2, where Nintendo obviously everybody knows what Nintendo is. Everybody knows the sort of games that you will find on a Nintendo. That the standard titles are the ones that everybody loves and goes back to. But Nintendo has a very specific vibe about it, and I think Microsoft were looking for that with the Xbox as well. They tried with Blinks the Time Sweeper, which was a shame because it's not a terrible game. But they tried with that. But really, it was about Halo. You know, you bought an Xbox, the original Xbox. Certainly, if you were into Halo, or you wanted to get into Halo, you bought the Xbox. You know, the two things were synonymous with each other. But what Sony bought was that just diversity, whatever you wanted, and it's why the PlayStation 2 was so popular, because it was incredibly powerful compared to the PlayStation, a huge generational leap, but also it just brought this just diversity of games. And you know, the other week we talked about accessories on the PlayStation 2. So it was also a full entertainment platform. You could play quiz games or whatever you wanted, and you could play your DVDs as well. So it was an incredible platform for its time, and that I think is why we don't see a single Mascot, because it really depends on who you are and what the PlayStation 2 meant to you as to whether you would pick a different Mascot, depending on, you know, which is why everyone's opinion is going to be different on this, right? Depending on what you played on the PlayStation 2, you might say, no, hey, I think it was this, because that's the game that I specifically associate with that generation of PlayStation. So there you go. Hopefully some food for thought for you there. Coming up in the channel, we've got next week will be the review of what it's been like to live with the PlayStation 2 for a month. And it's been quite stressful trying to find games that I want to review, because there's just not enough time. I could spend months with the PlayStation 2. I'll talk more about that next week as well. You know, you can probably gather what I'm going to say. But yeah, it's been a really interesting month, and I'll all be revealed next month, including what will also be next month's console as well. So we'll talk about that there as well. We've got a new PS1 Racer Challenge from Retro Red Steve, so we'll be doing that soon as well, which is RC de Go, which I've never played before. I've never even heard of it, so that's going to be interesting. So we'll have a good go at that. I really enjoyed Speed Freaks, which we did recently as well. And yeah, I can't sort of say what's coming up on the bit between next week, because that will be for the new console, which will get, I suppose you'll get a idea if you watch the bit between. You'll know what console I'm going to be looking at. Also one that's celebrating a birthday, which I think I may have already mentioned. So that is it for today. If you enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. Really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much to those who have subscribed already. I don't want you to miss anything, of course, so definitely hit that bell icon. But yeah, that's probably it for today. So just leaves me to say, please do all take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.